Now I want you to remember those four chords because they're going to pop up as sort of a theme that's underlying this whole study today on chord voicings. Welcome everybody to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. You know, we're all been hunkered down and we've had a lot of time on our hands to kind of dig deep. And as musicians, I think a lot of people are finding time to enjoy other people's music, as well as, take some online lessons and have some fun exploring new avenues. Well, I really got deep into thinking about chord voicings and piano, and then how that translates to the mountain dulcimer. So to get an idea about how you can use chord voicings in your everyday experience with this instrument, let's go first to the piano, and then we'll come on back and see how it all works together.
Now, the human ear can detect pitches ranging in frequency from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, which is about 10 octaves. An octave is the distance between a pitch of one particular frequency and another pitch that's double its frequency. For example, you've probably heard of A440. That's an A note that lives at a pitch of 440 hertz. When you double that pitch to 880 hertz, you end up with an A note that's an octave higher in pitch. Now you can imagine how insane it would be if we referred to each different pitch by its frequency number. Blech. So instead, we arrange them in numbered octaves. On an 88-key piano, this range includes 7 octaves out of the 10 that we can actually hear. There's only 3 notes available in the 0 octave and 1 note in the 8th octave, so let's just lose those for now. C4 is the C note that marks the start of the 4th octave on a piano. Since it's basically the middle of the instrument's range, it's often referred to as middle C. Now, if you go 1 octave up from middle C, you'll arrive at C5. And if you go 1 octave down from middle C, you'll find C3. The note plus its number lets us know some important information, namely what note to play and in what octave to play it. Now the lowest pitch on a mountain dulcimer tuned DAD is D3. That's played on the open bass string. The highest note varies depending on how many frets you have, but on the average you can play a G6 on the melody string at the 17th fret. That's roughly a 3.5 octave range. So we've got 3, 4, 5, G6. So if you take a look at our tuning, the bass string is D in the 3rd octave, the middle string is A in the 3rd octave, and the melody string is D in the 4th octave. So the bottom of our range is right around the middle range of the piano. Well, that's fascinating stuff, you might well be saying to yourself, but what does this have to do with chord voicings, and what the heck are those anyway? Well, chord voicing is a method of rearranging notes in a chord to change its sound. Let's start with a basic example using D major. To build a D major chord, we use the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of the associated major scale. In this case, D is the 1st note. It's also called the root. F sharp is the 3rd note. That's also called the major 3rd. And A is the 5th note, and that's also known as the perfect 5th. Root, major 3rd, and perfect 5th are all names of intervals, and they describe the distance between 2 notes. When you see these notes on the musical staff, they're all clustered together, not practicing social distancing. This is called close harmony, and it means that all 3 pitches fit into a narrow range with less than an octave between the bottom and the top notes. This creates tight, rich harmonies and textures. Another chord voicing is the first inversion. In this instance, we take the 3rd and we make it the bottom note. By taking the root up an octave, we maintain the close harmony, but the chord has a slightly different character to it. Root position, first inversion. Then we have the second inversion, which takes the fifth and places it at the bottom of the chord. Here I've taken the third up an octave, and we get yet another arrangement of notes that changes the overall quality of the sound, but we've still got a close harmony. Root, first inversion, second inversion, root, first inversion, second inversion. Sometimes it's desirable to rearrange the notes of a chord so that it spreads out over a greater range than just one octave. The type of voicing we're talking about now is called open harmony. A simple way to do this is to take a root position chord and then move the third up one octave. Okay, so why chord voicing? What's it good for? Well, one common use of chord voicing is to avoid parallel movements during chord progressions. If I play A minor, E minor, G major, and D major, all in the root position, that's kind of nice. But the intervals between pitches aren't changing, so the transitions are sort of abrupt and the notes seem to hop from one place to another. Not very smooth. But if I use a first inversion for the E minor chord and a second inversion for D major, we end up with this. Now we have less parallel movement in the pitches, and the transitions come out nice and smooth. Piano and guitar majors spend years learning and practicing this technique, but you may be surprised to know that as a mountain dulcimer player, you do this every day and may not even realize it. Let's go back to the mountain dulcimer and see how it works. All right. So if you haven't done so already, stop the video and go download the resource material from Patreon, because that's going to help you kind of visualize what's happening here with these chords and with these exercises. We have 6 exercises, 2 for each chord shape. Now we have our 3 basic chord shapes. We have the L shape, we have the slant shape, and we have the extended slant. And we'll be using that in 2 different ways. So please download at this URL down below the resource material for this exercise, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And real quick, let me talk about our unusual tuning configuration. First of all, guitars are tuned in a series of 3/4. We talked about intervals. So from one string to the next, it's an interval of a fourth, another fourth, another fourth, then a third, and then a fourth. These are short intervals, and it makes it easier for you to get your fingers on scales, chords, and things like that. That evolved out of a need to make the guitar an easier instrument to play. The mountain dulcimer has got a interval of a fifth from the bass string to the middle string, and an interval of a fourth from the middle string to the melody string. So just having that fifth in there is a little unusual, and it makes some of our stretches a little unbearable. Anybody who's played a 1-2-4 A major chord knows what we're talking about here. But also, we are going from the root of our spectrum, the beginning of the octave, to the octave above in the span of just 2 strings. That's a big, big, wide jump to make
when you only have two notes involved, and that affects the flavoring, the coloring of our chords as well. So oftentimes you may play a chord, and compared to somebody playing that same chord on a guitar or a piano, it sounds sort of indistinct, like a 3-4-5 E minor chord. It doesn't have the same powerful ring as, say, the 1-1-3 L-shaped E minor chord. Why is that exactly? We are about to look at it right now, and hopefully it'll shed some light on the subject. Okay, hopefully you have all your resource materials out in front of you. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first page. What we've got here is, first of all, the L-shaped chord, and all of these on the first page are favoring the melody string. And this is pretty much how, I don't know, like 85%, 90% of the time we're playing chords in the mountain dulcimer, especially if you're a beginner player, you're playing them in this formation. Why? Because they're easier to play that way. So let's take a look at the L-shaped chord. This is an open chord. So remember, an open chord is a chord that's got three notes, but they're stretched out over a period or over a spectrum, a range that is wider than an octave. And if you look at the notes on the staff, you can see that there's a big gap in between each of the notes in this chord. Now, open chords, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wimpy. Sometimes it means that they can be very, very strong. So let's take a look at what we've got here. And for each one of these exercises, we're going to be playing basically all the chords that we can possibly play in the key of D that are diatonic chords naturally occurring in the key of D. So we'll have chords based off of D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. So let's play a 0-0-2 chord for D, 1-1-3 for E minor, a 2-2-4 for F sharp minor, 3-3-5 for G major, 4-4-6.5 for A major, 5-5-7 for B minor, and 6.5-6-8 for C sharp diminished. Okay? Those aren't wimpy sounding chords. I mean, they're pretty nice, solid chords. So that just kind of goes to show you that the open chord can be used in great effect. In fact, a lot of composers like to use the open chord because it's more powerful sometimes. And so that is serving as not a root voicing, not a root position chord, but a chord that's solid nonetheless. And so the L-shaped chord is a favorite go-to when you need a chord that's going to give you all the support that you need. All right, so now we're moving to the slant chord, and the slant chord, again, favoring the melody string. That means that the finger that's on the melody string is the closest to the bridge, or another way of putting it, the finger that's closest to the bridge is on the melody string. I keep messing that up somehow, but you know what I'm saying by now is that we're focusing on that melody string instead of the bass string over here. For the slant chord, this is a first inversion. That means that we're taking the third of the chord and we're putting it on the bottom. So you end up with the third on the bottom, the root's in the middle, and the fifth is on the top. Let's go ahead and play through the slant chord, starting with 2-3-4 for D major, 3-4-5 for E minor, 4-5-6.5 for F sharp minor, 5-6-7 for G major, 6.5-7-8 for A major, 7-8-9 for B minor, and 8-9-10 for C sharp diminished. Now we're going to go on to the extended slant, and the extended slant, once again favoring the melody string. This is a second inversion, but it is a second inversion with an open voicing. That means that we do have the fifth on the bottom, but we've stretched out the range so that we are covering more than an octave. And this is a pretty powerful chord. It really shouldn't work that great. Why? Because the root of the chord is the highest note in the chord. But because it's an open voicing, it actually sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and play a 4-5-7 D major, 5-6-8 E minor, 6.5-7-9 F sharp minor, Now, I want to do these in order, so we're actually starting higher on the fretboard. We're going back now to the bottom for G major 013. Everybody's favorite chord, A major 124. B minor 235. And 3, 4, 6.5 for C sharp diminished. Okay. So as much as I've been botching it throughout the entire episode, what I keep meaning to say about favoring the melody or the bass is that when we're playing, say, how I want to do this, 2, 3, 4 chord, my thumb's on the melody string, and by looking down at that, I'm thinking about whatever finger, and I've got 3 fingers on the strings here. The finger that is closest to the bridge, the finger that's closest to the bridge is on the melody string. We are favoring the melody string. But if I flip this 2, 3, 4 chord around to a 4, 3, 2 chord, now the finger that is closest to the bridge is on the bass string. I am now favoring the bass string. We have taken the chord and we flipped it over. Not the same thing as an inversion, really. It is an inversion, but it's going to do some different things because we've got this bass string, and the bass string is going to give us different hierarchy in all the chords. So some very surprising things are going to happen here. And one of the things that's very confusing about the mountain dulcimer is that for guitar players, mandolin players, banjo players, their strings are reversed. Notice I said their strings are reversed and not our strings are reversed. So when you're trying to get the voices that come out of these other stringed instruments on a mountain dulcimer, it can be difficult because of the way our strings are situated. That's why I always find that flipping the chords over, favoring the bass string, gives you chords that are more similar to guitars, banjos, mandolins, and other instruments like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first example on page 2. This is the L shape favoring the bass, and we'll start off with D major 200, E minor 311, F sharp minor 422, G major 533, A major 6.544, B minor 755, and this one's tricky. C sharp diminished is 866.5. Get a load of that grip there. That comes in handy if you're starting to play chromatic dulcimer, you guys out there. All right. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is take a look at the chord symbols above the actual chords here. I didn't want to do this on the second exercise that's first inversion because I didn't want to freak anybody out. But this is how you write out an inversion. It's called a slash chord. So we know if you see the note by itself, D, that the root of the chord is going to be D, that the middle note is going to be F sharp, and that top note in the chord, the highest pitched note, is going to be A. For a first inversion, we're going to be putting the third on the bottom of the chord. So the way you would write that in the case of D major is D slash F sharp. So every single one of the chords you see here has the name of the chord and a slash, and then it's going to have the third written down next to it, so you know it's an inverted chord as opposed to a root position chord. Let's go ahead and move on to the slant chord, still favoring the bass. These are second inversion chords. We're taking the fifth of the note, or fifth of the chord, and we're putting it on the bottom as the root, starting with D major 432, E minor 543, F sharp minor 6.554, G major 765, A major 876.5, B minor 987, and C sharp diminished 1098. And finally, so you might be asking yourself, gosh, we've done all these different chord shapes and we flip them around and everything's been a weird sort of a spaced out voicing. First inversion, second inversion, open chords. Well, now finally we get to the one chord shape and grip that we can use to get root position, and that's using our extended slant flipped over. Let's go ahead and take a look at our root position chords here, starting with D, 7, 5, 4. E minor, 8, 6, 5. F sharp minor, 9, 7, 6.5. Now going on down back here to pick up G, 3, 1, 0. A major, 4, 2, 1. B minor, 5, 3, 2. And C sharp diminished, 6.5, 4, 3. So there you have an overview of the first inversion, second inversion, open chords, and also the root position chords that we can play on the mountain dulcimer just by using our 3 different chord shapes and then flipping them all over for 6 different combinations of things we can get. All right, so what else can we do with this sort of thing? Here's a good example. Remember the 4 chords that I played in the very, very opening of the show? I took those chords and I did something different with them on the piano. Let me show you how I'm going to do that here on the mountain dulcimer. The chords again are A minor, E minor, G major, and D major. So all of those are L-shaped chords. So that means that they are all open position. They're very powerful chords. But notice that I'm hopping back and forth, A minor, all the way down to E minor, all the way up to G major, then down to D major. We don't want to think about just the chord shape that we're moving. We want to think about the individual notes inside of those chords and how they're hopping back and forth as well. The idea here and the goal is to try and make the notes move as little as possible, each individual note, when it resolves to the next chord, to have little motion and still change the chord. That increases the smoothness, and it also gives you some rich, complex voicings. So let me show you what I've done with this quartet of chords. First of all, for A minor, I'm going to flip this over and play a 6-4-4 instead. And the 6-4-4 is going to give me a first inversion chord. So I can go from there and then slide it down into an E minor not far away. That's a heck of a lot different than going from A minor down here to E minor. There's more bass in that E minor, but there's a lot less motion in those 2 chords. Now, from here, I'm going to G major. Well, 2 of the notes in G major are already being handled, G and B. So all I have to do is move the E here down to D. Again, we're trying to not move the notes between chords too much. And then from here, all I have to do is hang on to that D, slide my G down to F sharp, and then move the B down to A for a D major. Compare that to all over the place to nice and smooth, man. Smooth as butter. Now, of course, it does change the character of the chord, especially since we're only working with 3 strings. But I can do both of those in a tune and have that many more colorful options available to me when I'm arranging or just picking around. So that's what I've been working on all week, and having a lot of fun with it on piano, and have been thinking about it on mountain dulcimer, but realized that I had been thinking about it wrong for a long time. So dissecting it and going from the piano then back over to the mountain dulcimer has been just a kick in the head, hasn't it? And I hope you had a great time with this. And again, if you have any ideas that you'd like to see on future Dulcimerica episodes, drop them to me at bingfutch@yahoo.com. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to my patrons. Without you, I would not be able to do this. And I'm always looking for new and interesting things to bring forward, and I think there's some wild things just around the corner, and I mean good wild things. Everybody, be blessed, be safe, and we'll see you next week.